Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Detachment is a Consequence. Inward is always. Actually, there are like two topics here that we're going to address. The first one is detachment. Well, we can hear a lot about you need to detach because somebody was asking me about it. How do you detach? My experience has been that I don't have the power to detach because the desire for something, whatever the case may be, already comes. It's ingrained in whichever identity I seems to identify with. Now, this is what I have found out. When I value something, well, there's a tendency to be an attachment to it. When I no longer value that, then the attachment ceases and I don't have to detach from it. It's just a consequence of not valuing that. So in this context in which we're speaking of here, the only thing that I ask you to value is peace over everything else. In other words, there's an old saying that says that a caterpillar will not leave a leaf unless it is fully attached to another one. You follow? Well, in these videos, the attachment would be to being, you see? Which have nothing to do with who I think I am. It's just simply being. When that is the most important thing in my life, anything that seems to be a threat to that, something within immediately detaches. Even when at the beginning it may be a seeming attachment, like for example, I see a desire for something and there's a part that kind of want to go in that direction. But the moment I'm aware that I don't want to hang on to anything because I don't want to lose the peace in which I am resting, the detachment happens automatically. You see? Once you know who you are, in essence, even the attachment to the body drops. That doesn't mean that you don't take care of it. I mean, I do take care of this body the best way I can, but not with an obsession or anything. It's just basically my experience has shown me that if I take care of it, I tend to feel better. Not a guarantee. Anything could happen, but I like to feel better, and if that contributes to the peace that I am, well, I do my best to take care of it. Knowing, like I always say, that this is not something that I do, this is just what seems to be happening through this instrument. Okay? So when there's already a true desire for peace above everything else, notice how detachment happens as a consequence. I don't have to detach. I might be able to notice what I am attached to. So put a little bit of consciousness or focus in there. Says, oh, I see I'm attached to this. Could be my children. Could be, I don't have any children, but in your case, maybe, I don't know. Children, family, body image, whatever. So you can look at that and say, okay, there's attachment here. And now the issue is don't forget about your children and about your body. And no, this is not the issue here. When we're talking about the essence of who you are, which is love anyway, well, there may not be attachment to the children, but the love is even more pure because it doesn't come from a place of neediness or fear. It's an extension of the nature of what you are. So what I'm pointing out here is that when you're resting in the fact that you are, notice how there's a natural detachment to everything that is no longer valued to you. And the fear of dying, for example, which is the fear that we want to hang on to this body, once you know who you are, then all of that withers away as well. Just follows by the wayside. It's like when you're sleeping and you're dreaming. If you know you're dreaming, then it doesn't matter what happens with the body in the dream. It has no effect on the dreamer of the dream. And even if in the dream you have a family and children and everything, but the mind is not fearful of letting go of the dream, because when it lets go of the dream, it's not that the children will stay in the dream and the family will stay in the dream suffering the loss of the character in the dream. No, everything disappears because it is a dream. Same thing here. So once again, detachment is really a consequence. Let's not put the attention on detachment. Let's just ask ourselves, what is the most important thing to me right now? And if it's anything of this world, attachment will be there. It's just a consequence of that. But if the most important thing is the peace that you are, then detachment falls naturally. And again, you notice when there's attachment to go back again and realize, okay, I can choose again. And then inward is always, and the reason being is because, and I've talked about this in videos before, but the message is repetitive anyway. A lot of time we talk about going inward, you see, but remember this, you are always being, and that being is the quote-unquote inward. When you're sleeping and you're dreaming, you are always in the bed. So you don't have to go inward in the dream to get back to the bed. You are always in bed. It just so happens that sometimes when the mind is identified with the dream, it forgets that it's in bed. In other words, it forgets that it's inward, and it gives the appearance of an outward. But you are always inward. Right now, you are inward because you are. You are being. But if you're distracted with the content of the mind, if you're distracted with the thoughts, if you're believing the thoughts, if you're distracted with the projection, it's not that you're outward. You're still inward. That is always. But the appearance of outward is showing up just because the inward has not been lost, has been overlooked. You see? Right now, you cannot go inward. Now, the mind may suggest that if I close my eyes, I go inward. No, that is still another outward playing the role of an inward, because now it's playing the role of someone who closes their eyes and goes inward. But all of that is happening already in the inward that you are. So right now, you are inward. You're always inward. You can never go inward. That's why I don't like to use the word, and if I have used it before for whatever the reason, might be within the context of the video. But I don't like to use the word going inward. What I usually say is if you don't identify with the content of the mind. That's what I say. If you don't identify with the content of the mind, what remains? Well, that which remains is the equivalent of inward. And that which remains, have always been, is, and will always be. So you're always inward, maybe distracted at times with the seeming outward. And that only comes as a consequence of belief that I'm this separate entity. Without that belief, all that there is what is. With that belief, the what is seems to be overlooked by what we refer to as outward. But there's no outward or no inward. Only is what is. That is all that there is. And well, this is the inspiration that came through. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can become evident.